So welcome into Philadelphia Walks PTSD. My name is Sharon Cole, or Sharon, or Cole, whatever you want to refer to me as, in a good way. Don't care. I've been called everything under the sun: rat, pig, horse, cow, dog, uh, dinosaur, lizard, and so forth and so on. Good girl, no barking. Even had a client who looked at his dog and then looked at me and said, "Good girl, no barking." So that is proof enough that people were playing along with some sort of sick, sadistic game, even with all their advantages, taking advantage of someone who was struggling to survive as an independent female who's never been married or has been able to rely on a partner, or a male who's, who might be more of a breadwinner, and so forth and so on. So sticks and stones may break my bones, but words shall never hurt me, as they say. Of course, words do hurt people. So that's an old saying. We're supposed to be tough enough to withstand it, unless, of course, it's mixed in with a whole bunch of other things. People can be very hurtful. So particularly the whatever population was here leading up to 2011, and from 2011 to 2018, and there. For some reason, I did find myself on a track, possibly, or in a program, unwittingly and unwillingly and against my will, and against my human rights, in a program in which whenever I seek out certain types of work or what have you, I will encounter people who play some sort of bizarre game. It seems hard to believe, but I don't wish this upon innocent people, but it could happen to you. If you're innocent, then obviously it could happen to you. If you're not innocent, then it won't happen to you because you're part of the problem. So anyway, but with that said, I'll start with my normal spiel, and it's day 166. I took a little bit of a break here and there, and I have some videos that I privatized just because of whatever comes up. I don't necessarily want to have it publicized. So you won't see every single day on here for various reasons. But anyway, today is day 166. And I'll start with my usual spiel for people who don't know, the basics of the story. But on the fourth Monday of January 2011, I was made to believe I'd be murdered in my apartment by a series of orchestrated events, and they were a series of orchestrated events. And I would love to know who set that up, because they are very sick and sadistic. It's akin to the story, and some people may remember this, of a girl who was being buried alive by her so-called friends. And this case wound up going to court because she was not in the know or in the loop of her friends wanting to create some sort of viral video or some sort of video. And they dragged her out in the dark to some sort of cemetery or whatever. I don't know the whole story, but I remember thinking it's like that because I have no idea what's going on. And a whole bunch of people are playing a game for their own benefit. So it's like that. And it can, if you're in a situation, it can feel very intense. And people who did something wrong, they know they did something wrong. So anyway, it's also like a snuff film. So I would look up a million things trying to figure out an answer or a solution to what I was experiencing. I got the mother load of mobbing, gang stalking, orchestrated harassment, choreographed idiocy, and what have you. That can even include city infrastructure, because you'll start to see certain things pop up, and they're either part of the problem or the solution. But even stores or shops could be part of stalking someone. So it depends on how you look at it. When you're in the mix of being tortured, everything looks bad. So I'll just say really quickly, when I was originally scared on the fourth Monday of January 2011, I was shaking, trembling, convulsing to the point where I couldn't even hold my phone. My entire body went limp. My blood ran cold. I couldn't speak for like a minute or two. Finally called my sister, then called police. The police did absolutely nothing. They were completely useless. I'm just going to say that. I ultimately, over many years, reported them to the internal affairs. They don't even work for the police department any longer. But I put it out there, internal affairs, what the hell was going on that evening? Because I want to know if these people knew what was up, and if it was a setup, and if there are people who actually go through the academy and get jobs in the police department in order to raise themselves up in another world. Because they will use the police department and get paid $80,000 a year for a couple of years before moving on to whatever these clearance, we'll go on to the FBI, we'll go on here, we'll go on there. That's a lot of money for people without a college education, isn't it? Because you are not required to have a college education to be a police officer. In fact, a C average is good enough. So I even reported police to internal affairs. Infernal. It's an inferno. That's a big, trust me on that one. So what happened that evening is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the biggest death threats you can ever find. And if that weren't enough, the games commenced after that. I would try to call my mom the next day, and in fact, we just had someone come up, as soon as I started a video, someone magically shows up on our floor. But anyway, I would call my mom the next day because I didn't want to call anyone during the night. My mom and aunt lived together to share resources. They were older and could only live on the bare minimum. And what I got was, we're sorry, the phone number you're trying to reach has been disconnected. Wow, what a coinky dink. Their phone lines were disconnected in Jacksonville, Florida. They would, in the next year, leave and move to Gainesville as per the urging of a cousin who lived in Gainesville, Florida. Drama of all dramas. Let's have them move to Gainesville. And I didn't think so much of it at the time, but I have a feeling they wanted them out of Jacksonville and in Gainesville for safety reasons. Meanwhile, I was being tortured constantly, consistently, 100 times a day. Layers upon 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 layers of innuendo, even text messaging from clients or so forth and so on. There are so many layers of attacks. It is ridiculous that I am not holding $60 million in my hand right now. So what I wanted to talk about today, because there's so many things to talk about, I will choose one thing. And this is about hugging a radiator. So in 2010, leading up to 2011, other people probably knew something was on the horizon or that something was about to blow. I did not. I was trying to figure out where to live comfortably. I was running with a running group. I was volunteering with 2 other groups. I was dragon boat racing. So I thought I had a group of healthy friends and connections. So it's not like we have a bunch of people considered drug addicts or low light or whatever you want to call people. These are people who appear to be healthy and appear to be paying their mortgage aside from their dads probably help them or what have you. These people are in homes because of nepotism and their families and where they come from. And I say nepotism because I'm wondering if it's a job that they stay in their home and harass people to death. And it's a family tradition. But anyway, leading up to 2010, I would wind up in the apartment where I would be terrorized and everything set off and all the neighbors played along. So I was placed there. And oddly, my name is Sharon and there's a Sharon Bank. There's a Sharon's Bank or a Sharon Bank part of the Philadelphia region. I didn't think much of it. I knew that there was a Sharon's Bank. I looked them up online. They say on their website that they've been around for eons, but I do think it's part of the issue. My name is Sharon Cole, and there was also a Cole House that was the headquarters of a credit card bank that was a huge, big, gigantic bank in Delaware. It was called Maryland Bank N.A. or MBNA. The Cole House was plopped down next to apartments in which my step-sibling's father lived in a yucky garden apartment. His name was Ed Ely. He's deceased now. He passed away in the 90s. I wonder why. The system singles people out, especially if you aren't married or remarried or have kids to take care of on a full-time basis. I actually think that's part of the equation. But my dad wound up with his wife, Frank Cole. Everybody's deceased now in the parental realm. So Frank Cole wound up with Barbara, formerly Ely, now Cole, or she's deceased now. And the Cole house plopped down right in the face of Ed Ely, and he lived in an apartment while my dad and stepmother lived in a house for many years. They had to do apartment, townhome, and then house, but they were able to make that leap because they had each other, 2 incomes, one a nurse and one my dad working for a bank. So Sharon and Cole, we have 2 banking institutions, which means somebody owes me a lot of money as far as I'm concerned. How orchestrated is that block on 19th and South from 20th and South? And believe me, I have plenty of videos of Sharon's Bank being there and pictures. So if they ever try to change the terrain, which they already have because where I live has been redone and the next door house has been totally redone. It looks totally different. They will come along and erase terrain to change history enough. Because if you're not someone who learned how to document, because usually when people are terrorized, documenting isn't like a thing. You wouldn't even have the ability. You're like barely surviving. Over the years, I had to learn how to document. And I was a writer, so it was already technically part of my skill set-ish. So anyway, we'll start in 2010. I wound up there for various reasons. I was living above Dirty Frank's. Remember, my dad's name was Frank. I didn't think of it at the time. It was a Pearl Properties. Now it's a Renzi Properties at 13th and Pine. So Aretha Franklin's painted on there in a mural, Frankie Avalon, Ben Franklin, and so forth and so on. Really quick, my dad and step family wound up with a stray dog, and they called him Benji. And when I think about it, did they see my dad as a dog? Ben Franklin? Oh, the neighbors weren't taking care of this stray dog, which could be code for, your mom really wasn't taking care of your husband, which is why I wound up with him. Which wouldn't be true because my mom was a very caring, nurturing person. I think other things were involved. But I'm wondering if someone out there played it up. We're better caretakers. We do a better job of taking care of a man, I guess, who's quite needy and needs a lot of taking care of. It's not exact. My dad wasn't overly needy, but that would be the implication. Ben Franklin. There's a lot of dog references that came up even close to his death. He kind of joked about being left in a car, and Barbara had to roll the window down a little bit, crack the window for my dad left in the car while she ran into Publix because he had a stomach stent and a heart stent, all these operations. This was during the year of the pandemic. And it dawned on me that he was being treated like a dog again. Good girl, no barking. So anyway, I was living above Dirty Frank's in Pineview Apartments. I wanted to save money. I met someone while dragon boat racing I'll just say her name was Laura. Moved in to rent her room, a room in her house. She had a house, and she was like, you can rent a room with me. There were a couple little flags because I wasn't used to living with someone just because I needed control, and people are dumbasses. Especially for women, it's very hard to find someone you can trust unless you know them really well and grew up with them. Wind up there, and she played all kinds of games. I'm like, this is whack. I'm calling up people I knew at the time saying, what do you think? Do you think I should find another apartment? Which meant a lot of work. And also I didn't want to deal with having to put up a lot of money up front. This was and the timing kind of worked because I got my security deposit from my old apartment just in time to find a new apartment. And that's why I wound up at 626 South 19th Street. They're just north of Bainbridge on 19th Street and about 3/4 of a block south of Sharon's Bank. Finally get there, and I'm relieved because I'm like, there's no way. I can't believe this person turned into an actual Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. There were little tiny red flags, but I figured everybody's quirky. But once I moved in, it got weird. She should be locked up in a mental institution. There are people who have been in mental institutions who are way better than that piece of... I don't even want to give her any power. That is ridiculous. I want to know who's been supporting her all these years with whatever work that she gets, because she is heavily supported by people who are in severe denial. So because of her, I was forced to move to another place and found that really quick. And there were questionable circumstances in getting the apartment because 5 people showed up to see the apartment at the same time. That has never happened to me in my seeking of apartments in my lifetime. Usually they show one person at a time an apartment. This became a very competitive thing. So I was desperate. So I was like filling out the paperwork really quick. I'm like, please give me the apartment. Please give me the apartment. Please do it. See how they pressured me to hurry up and apply for that apartment? Those people were part of a setup. They never even wanted the apartment. That's how I see it at this time. That's how they made sure I was in that apartment. That's how much proof exists. And I want to know where my lawyers are immediately pro bono so that I can collect my $60 million. Because 13 years of being tortured by a bunch of idiots who learned how to play mind games to get ahead or to keep people at bay. And I mean severe. I mean prisoner of war level. I am so dead serious. So one of the little games by the lower level terrorists, who happens to be from South America and somehow wound up living here, Portuguese, Brazilian. They speak Portuguese in Brazil. So I had used Facebook a little bit back in the day, and I moved into this apartment. And I was kind of being cute because despite everything that had gone on leading up to me having to move into that apartment, I was still like kind of okay because I was running with a running group, and that creates a lot of serotonin. And basically, when you're running, it helps you stay healthy, happy, and up. I ran in 2 half marathons, 13 miles, and a couple 5Ks. And every Saturday, basically, I ran a 5K, but I ran 3.1 miles with a group called the Front Runners, which I accidentally called the Runt Runners the other day, the Front Runners. So I was being cutesy, and I'm like, oh, because there was a radiator in the apartment of the landlord who owned that property, which was a row home converted to apartments. I was on the first floor, front apartment. So I, in a cute way, said, oh, I'm out. It was cold. It was probably like December or early January before everything would kick off. And I said I was hugging the radiator. Like, oh, hugging the radiator. It's cold out there. Put my wet socks up on it because when you're dog walking, you are supposed to. It started snowing in December of 2010 and continued in 2011. We had historic snowfall that year, the most amounts and biggest blizzard, whatever you want to call it, since 1941, which is when my mom was born, the year of Pearl Harbor. Hugging the radiator. And I posted it like, oh, I'm hugging the radiator. It's chilly outside. Ooh. The partner or girlfriend of someone who kept wanting to hang out with me as if she wanted to leave her partner, she kind of did come on a little bit strongly. But her partner, who happened to be Brazilian-ish, Americanized Brazilian, mocked my post, saying something about hugging a radiator. So it seemed I was like, I'm like, did she decide to say it herself? Because I think they had a radiator also. I was trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. I was like, I wonder why she did this. But I was like, well, that's odd. But it did have a little bit of a heart drop thing. Like, I saw these people as somewhat friends. I had taken care of their dogs. I thought I was like, oh, I'm in the lesbian community, and I'll be, I found new clients as a dog walker in the lesbian community. And it was kind of a fun thing where everybody's, taking care of each other, per se. But she seemed to be mocking me. So I don't know what to say, but it did hurt me. There was another time when she wrote something in Portuguese or Spanish, which is close enough. And most people would back in the day, you would use that thing like translate this to see what it means. And I remember her girlfriend, who was coming on to me, by the way, in a setup, said, oh, did you translate it? She wanted to see if I had translated it. And it's like, what's the big deal? She was playing like a high school game. They have high school minds despite their age. They are still high school minded people. They have not grown up at all. And anyone who plays this game is not grown up. They have not evolved and they never will. They are a certain type of personality and they will continue to be children for the rest of their lives. And they will be treated as such. They're the dogs, I am not. So anyway, mocked with the radiator hugging. Also, these people are people who have severe problems, and they act as if they're above other people, as if as if they're in control. All they did was learn how to be a high school bitch. That's completely useless in the world. You cannot get along in the world that way. The partner would want to keep hanging out with me, and I would go on an errand with her to pick up some prescription pills that she needed from Walgreens. And Walgreens made an error, and I'm wondering if the State Department intervened because they gave her generic. And she's not supposed to have generic. Her benefits cover designer. I don't know much about the prescription world because somehow I managed to avoid it and I stay holistic. Thank you, God. I will continue that. Because Big Pharma does create a lot of robots and zombies. It's a Band-Aid at best. That's right. For whatever people's problems are. I went through therapy myself, but I worked through all my issues and suffered a lot, very severe, it's hard to tell, depression and also all this BS. But anyway, this person, she had a very bad reaction when picking up her generic prescription. And she confronted the pharmacists at a level of which seemed quite aggressive, which is why they have plastic or plexiglass windows. So it turns out the people who attacked me are terrorists. They have a lot of issues that have never been, as far as I can tell, they haven't changed. She almost jumped over the counter and strangled that guy. That's how aggressive she was. But they wanted to play a game, and these people played it hard. We had hundreds of thousands of minions of people who played a game out here. This was a major show on Earth in Philadelphia. And I was the number one target, and I know it. And they know it. They wanted to provoke me. They used thousands of people every day. Every client played the game acting like an asshole through text messages. Everyone tried to be in control. We're in control. We're going to boss you around. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It is disturbing. These people are out of control. They have no control whatsoever. They wanted all these people, an army, 10 armies, jumped on me. That is heavy. That is extreme provocation. They wanted to make me look aggressive. They're the terrorists. I am a victim of I'm a prisoner of war victim of their behavior. These people need to be investigated heavily and their families. Do you hear me? I now answer to a higher call, and they will never, ever get to reach the level that I currently exist at. Okay, have a great day. Thank you so much. Oh, don't be sad. Poor things.